So I'm going to take the next few minutes to introduce you all to our foundational series, which is the Critical Reading and Writing series. It's designed to improve the reading, analysis, and composition skills of students grades 6 to 12. So give me 1 second and I'm going to share the screen. Okay, so the first question is, what is CRW, or the Critical and Writing series? So this is what I would call our foundational series. I've taught a lot of test prep, and one issue I notice with students who try to prepare for either the SAT or even the GRE or the SSAT is when it comes to skills like reading and writing, improving these skills require a long-term process. We cannot work miracles, and we cannot change a student from a below average writer to a excellent writer within 3 weeks. A lot of these skills require what I would call long-term planning and specialized feedback, as well as long-term classes that are designed to improve these skills step by step. So CRW is a series designed to lead students through different levels that are appropriate for their skill set and to essentially challenge them so that these skills can be honed. So this is an excerpt from our course roadmap. Notice how this is only an excerpt, right? Notice how it begins at level 2, and then it extends all the way up to level 4. Right, so we have different levels that are aimed towards students of varying skill levels. So that's reading skills and composition skills. Again, like I said, this is a long-term roadmap. Students would either enter the series at perhaps level 1 or level 2 or even level 3, and then work their way upwards to the final summit of around level 4 or level 5. All of these classes are designed so that they operate in tandem with each other. There is, I am the teacher who oversees all of the classes, so I make sure that there is a clear road that students can progress through. Okay. So this is an excerpt from our syllabi. You'll notice that the classes are divided in between reading and writing. The material I use for the class, I created myself, or I curate very high quality texts from literature. They can be fiction and nonfiction or philosophy that I think are both appropriate for the students to read as well as sufficiently challenging. As for writing assignments, I also write my own essay prompts, and I individually grade and give feedback to all of the students' essays. So this is a series that's very much designed to cater to each individual student despite being a group class. So now I'm going to take you through, and this is an excerpt from our class website. You'll notice that I assign them reading discussion questions as well as reading material. Okay. So this is an example of one of the reading passages I would have them read. These passages are actually on par with the SAT, right? So if students are ultimately trying to prepare for the SAT, or they want to achieve a reading level that's on par with what's expected of that test, for instance, as would be expected in a college classroom or a high school classroom, the class is designed to make sure that students can excel at that level. So in a typical class, we read this passage together, and then we answer these questions together. Right? So I ask the students to respond, give me their answers, and then we will go over the answers to these questions in detail. I tend to like to use the annotation function to point out specific portions within the passage that will allow the students to receive the correct answer. So one thing I want to push students to do is to have a very detailed method of reading, that they're able to tie their answers to specific words. So another example of a question. This is what we call the vocabulary question. Again, I go through all these questions with students, and I've observed in my time with students that those who progress from the start of the series all the way up to the end, I can see significant improvement in their accuracy on these questions. And these questions, like I said, are on par with the SAT, PSAT, etc. Another thing is I assign them outside reading. So in one of my classes, I recently had them read Shakespeare by Romeo and Juliet. how I have them read it is, one, I test them for comprehension. Shakespeare is more difficult. The language is very dense. So I go through it line by line and I tell them, okay, so this is what that line means. That's level one. The second level is then we go look at what the authorial intent is. So not just basic reading comprehension, but I will bring in something like historical context that will teach them how to interpret the text. So at least for this scene, which is the infamous balcony scene, in my class, I went over the significance of a Petrarchan conceit. Right? So from his history and the examples of other sonnets, we can see the language that's being used in this literary device called a Petrarchan conceit. Then, after I go through that concept, students should be able to apply it to the reading we just did from Shakespeare. They should be able to recognize that Romeo in this soliloquy is using the language of Petrarchan conceits to speak about Juliet. Then we do level 3, which is the significance. Right? Why does Shakespeare have Romeo use this language? And again, all the classes are discussion-based. It's more like a seminar. But like I said, when we go through outside assigned reading, there's 3 different levels of comprehension that I want them to have. One is basic reading comprehension. The second is significant historical context and literary devices. And then the third is interpretive. This material is all selected by me. I provide them with the necessary context. And through that, we're just training these kids how to think critically, right? To interpret at a level that's not just simplistic, because that is the level that's required by high school, advanced placement, and college courses. Okay, another thing we have is the writing section. So I'm going to show you an excerpt from a speech that I had the students write on. So the first thing I always give is historical context. That's important. So I had the students write on a speech by Demosthenes, who was a very famous classical rhetorician. This speech is usually regarded as one of the very best rhetorical persuasive speeches in all of history. So this is the argument I had them write on. So within class, I go through the argument with them. Right? I ask them to summarize the argument for me, as well as interpret the argumentative structure, if they can. Then I will point out a few things that they can note. Number one thing I pointed out for this paragraph, and I'm annotating throughout the class, is that they can look at things like the dichotomy of speech and action, right? How Demosthenes is clearly contrasting these 2 different things to make an argument about people who are only speaking in empty flattery when this is a time that actually calls for action. So as a class, we go over this. Then I assign them their essay prompt. So this is the essay prompt I assigned on the Demosthenes speech. You'll notice it's very detailed. This is also what we call rhetorical analysis essay. This is the type of essay students will be expected to write for both the SAT, the AP language, and for college courses. The series is very much designed to have, the more advanced students be able to excel in subjects and classes and material that their school may not be able to, or it is not going to push them to. Okay, so then afterwards, I always have the students submit the essays and I give them individualized feedback on their essays. So I'll show you an example of my students' essays as well as part of the feedback I gave them. So this is essay 1. One thing is that I noticed students very much improve very rapidly. Okay, so this is from a student who's kind of taken the course for a while. And you'll notice that their analysis is already more mature, right? They can cite evidence very well. And then on the side, you can see my individualized feedback that I give them. And I noticed that in the process, the more specific feedback you give students, the better they're able to improve. Okay? And then this is an example of another essay, which has, I think, in my opinion, quite mature analysis. And you can see, again, the individualized feedback on the sidebar. And I noticed just through the process, this is how, I've seen significant improvement in writing through this, because I have had students that have been with the series for quite a few classes. So in summary, overview of the material and the structure of our CRW classes. As you can note, All the material is carefully curated, it's sufficiently challenged, and is designed with the aim of having students excel in foundational subject material, as well as material that is likely not covered in classes, but will be necessary for them to achieve, like I said, the advanced placement courses, the standardized tests, and in college composition courses. So I very much hope to see you guys join us in the CRW series. I think is a very well designed and beneficial course that, again, I've seen many results from within the students that I've taught. So thank you for your time. If you have any questions, do contact other people.